It is always very difficult for parents to get a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. Some of them may know or may expect it, especially for those who are born very early on or had a very difficult childbirth. But I think for all parents, the diagnosis of a cerebral palsy child is always a very challenging time for them.
Finley, he stopped breathing at birth, and so he was sort of taken out of my arms and rushed off into intensive care, and seeing him in the incubator was just really hard as a family to sit, and I feel, yeah, it was hard. I think the hardest thing was not knowing whether he'd walk or be able to talk, things like that, you know, you just don't know how much it affected him. There was numerous tests taken. He was then diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 18 months old.
So when we first saw Finley, his legs were tight, but he was finding ways around them. He was able to walk with some help. Because of that, we thought that Finley would be an excellent candidate for SDR. So SDR stands for selective dorsal rhizotomy. It is an operation that has been around for quite a long time. What has changed over the last few years is that we do it through a much smaller spinal procedure. So the surgery takes about 3 hours. What we do involves cutting some of the sensory nerves in the spine at the point where the spinal cord finishes. That's about 2/3 down the back. And by cutting some of the nerve roots in the spine, only the sensory ones of course, then we can reduce the spasticity in the legs. We then close the muscles and the skin and wake up the child.
That was the longest day of my life, I think, like having to watch him be put to sleep, and he was in their hands. After the operation, Dr. Aquilina called us into a room and he said to us, "I'm so excited to see how he's going to do because he's just such a determined little boy."
Excellent.
And for a child like Finley, the rehabilitation after SDR is a long-term process. Selective dorsal rhizotomy is not a cure for cerebral palsy, it just modulates the way they walk and the way they move. It's always important to have an intense period of therapy immediately after the surgery, which is why at the Portland we offer them 2 weeks of intensive therapy where they get an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon every day.
Before the operation, I found it difficult to run, kick and cross my legs.
Keep going, all the way. That's it. Good boy.
After the operation, I can walk, kick, swim and play football.
10! Great work, Finley.
It has been now a year since Finley had his SDR operation. We were delighted to see that he's doing very well. He's now able to walk independently for longer distances. He doesn't get tired as much. So I think for Finley it has been a good journey of strengthening, improved coordination, improved stamina, and more importantly, improved participation in the events and activities he enjoys.
His life has changed dramatically.
Good, a big jump after the last one.
7!
You know, he gets up, he's a happy little boy in the morning, he's excelling at school. It's changed him completely, for the better.
So I have been involved in selective dorsal rhizotomy surgery since 2011, and to date I have done about 230 operations. As a neurosurgeon, I feel it's a privilege to have an opportunity to do an operation that actually makes a difference to children with cerebral palsy, not just in their childhood but potentially in the long term.
The future is bright. What is Finley Boyko going to do? Who knows?
I'm really proud of having my SDR operation. Thank you, Dr. Aquilina.